When a seemingly random, heartless killing shocked Glasgow, it was a murder that desperately needed to be solved because of a potentially explosive racial dimension to the crime. 15-year-old Kriss Donald was kidnapped in broad daylight, tortured, and killed. The Clyde walkway used by cyclists and joggers was where the teenager's body was found.
The body was lying at the foot of a grassy slope. He was partially clothed and had extensive burn injuries. He looked very small. In fact, he was a child at that time. He was 15. And it was a very, very bleak sight. Everyone was very quiet and respectful.
The pathologist said 15-year-old Kriss Donald was stabbed 13 times in unusual circumstances.
When someone's stabbed, the natural instinct, if they can, usually is to raise their hands and their arms to try and defend themselves, and they often sustain cuts and stab wounds to their hands and their arms, and Kriss had none. And in the absence of any other explanation in Kriss's case, it suggested that it was likely he'd actually been restrained by one or more individuals whilst he was being stabbed.
And in between two of the logs there was charring on the ground as well?
Yes.
And even when the burnt fabric on the logs and around the logs, there was a smell of petrol as well?
Yes, that was the assault site. And then with the charred pieces of fabric that had led onto the grass from here and down towards where he was found.
Yeah. His tracksuit trousers had totally been consumed in the fire apart from the waistband, so that tied in with the pieces of fabric lying around the area.
When accelerants are used, you can be set alight when you're alive and not inhale any soot or carbon monoxide, and the circumstances suggested that he was probably set alight whilst he was still alive.
When Kriss was attacked and kidnapped by 5 Asian men, his friend, Jamie Wallace, was with him.
He said, I'm only 15. And they said, do you know what pain is? You're next. And they were saying about me, I was next. And then after that, I seen him getting dragged into the car, head first, and the 2 doors slamming, and they sat on him, and they started punching into him.
The prime suspect was a thug, notorious and feared in his own community.
He appeared to be quite a significant individual within the Pollock Shields area, very into saving face. His reputation appeared to be very precious to him, and we believe there was an incident the night before the abduction where he was in the city centre of Glasgow where he certainly lost some face. Some local boys from the Pollock Shields area would appear to have made fun of him, ridiculed him in some way. He was unable to do anything about it at that time, and he would appear to have been incandescent with rage about this and sought to take some sort of action to reassert himself.
Kriss was kidnapped in broad daylight and forced to endure what must have been a nightmarish journey.
It would appear to be that the intention was to murder him. Have they been going to be taking him somewhere to do that? I mean, this young boy, he wouldn't know what's happening to him. He would be absolutely petrified for what's going on. 5 guys there who are very agitated, have just abducted a young boy. You've got a leader who's looking to save face, he's looking to regain his reputation, doesn't appear to care to what lengths he needs to go to do that. It's just a horrific murder all round. It was just, every aspect of it just defies belief.
On the journey with Shahid and the others, Kriss heard hundreds of calls discussing his fate. His killers destroyed their phones, thinking they'd outwit the police. But phone calls meant phone records.
These guys were on the phones all the time. They were constantly texting, phoning, folk contacting them between 3 o'clock in the afternoon when Kriss was abducted through until 8 o'clock at night when the car was set on fire. And there was a period just around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which was around the time of the abduction, 20-25 minutes, no activity in the phones at all.
Calls were traced to Strathclyde Park outside Glasgow, where the Mercedes parked briefly. Then the phones separated. One of the gang had to get home because he was a convicted criminal, his leg tagged for curfew. Imran Shahid and the others set out on a 180-mile round trip to Dundee with Kriss still jammed in the footwell. It's not known why they took this journey, and they returned to Glasgow under the cover of darkness.
And there was another period of time after 7 o'clock at night, another 20-25 minutes, no activity at all on the phones. Now, the assessment is, and I believe it to be true, that's the time the murder took place.
5 Asian men were being hunted for the kidnapping and brutal murder of a white boy. Daanish Zahid got 22 years, the first man in Scotland to be convicted for a racially motivated killing. Zahid Mohammed, the tagged criminal who left Strathclyde Park, got 5 years. But 3 other suspects had escaped to Pakistan, which has no extradition treaty with the UK.
There was always this fear that, have they managed to evade justice? Have they managed to get away and get to a safe haven? And I think that's what their thought process was. They wouldn't need to be brought to justice for the horrific crime they'd committed. We had to submit a case to the Crown in Scotland to say, look, this is a case against these 5 individuals, and they were happy with that. But we then kind of redo the whole thing again and prove then to Pakistan authorities that, look, we're not wanting them on suspicion, we're not wanting them because we don't think there's a case to answer.
Although negotiations went well, the possibility of finding the fugitives seemed remote. An agonizing 16 months later, they were finally captured in a village in rural Pakistan.
Imran Shahid, 25 years minimum. The judge told him, "You are a thug and a bully with a sadistic nature, and you are not fit to be at liberty in a civilized society." Faisal Mustaq, also hearing the anger of the crowd. Finally, Zeeshan Shahid. No remorse here.
Absolutely no remorse at all. No empathy at all with the fact it's a 15-year-old boy who they had never known. He's randomly picked off the street and murdered in the most horrific way. Quite chilling.